In this video, I am going to introduce absolute value function, which is a very important function in math. So absolute value is like a machine. That machine, so this is our machine. We call that machine F. So this machine looks at the input. If, for example, 5 comes in, because 5 is already positive, this machine has nothing to do with this number, and that number remains unchanged. If square root of 3 goes in, again, square root of 3 is positive, therefore function does nothing and keeps that number. However, when a negative number comes in, this machine changes this number to a positive number. How? We multiply it by another negative number. And this is how this machine makes everything positive. So there are two cases. Either the incoming number is positive or negative. If it's positive, machine has nothing to do with that, and the number stays same. But if the incoming number is a negative number, you multiply it by another negative number to make it positive. So if negative pi goes in, this is how the machine changes that to a positive number. The symbol for absolute value is two vertical lines. For example, absolute value of 5 is equal to 5. Why? Because 5 is positive and absolute value doesn't change it. What is absolute value of negative 11? It becomes negative 11, which is 11. So actually absolute value is a machine that changes all numbers to positive numbers, right? So therefore, it is not hard to understand the definition of absolute value. See, there are two cases. Either x is larger than or equal to 0 or x is less than 0. So we said absolute value of x, if x is larger than 0, it's itself. We can put here if. And if the number is negative, you multiply it by another negative. This is the definition of absolute value, right? And again, if you look at this one, it says if x is larger than or equal to 0, then absolute value of x becomes itself. No change. The absolute value of x becomes itself. But if x is a negative number, we multiply it by another negative to make it positive. A lot of students are confused that how come negative x is positive? Of course negative x is positive because x is negative. Therefore, negative x is positive. This is the definition of absolute value. Now, let's practice and try to understand deeply how it works. Look at this expression, absolute value of the square root of 3 minus 1. We want to know how the absolute value changes this expression. So square root of 3 minus 1 is positive. Why? Because the square root of 3 is larger than 1. Therefore, absolute value has nothing to do with that. See? the number remains unchanged. However, if inside the absolute value is the square root of 2 minus square root of 5, we know that square root of 5 is larger than the square root of 2, therefore inside the absolute value is a negative number. Thus, the second part of the definition applies, that is saying you multiply it by a negative number. So now we apply the distributive law. Negative goes in, it becomes negative square root of 2 plus square root of 5. This is how absolute value changes the expressions. Okay, now let's have another example. I want to know what is answer to this expression. As simple as possible. Okay, look at the inside of the first absolute value. Obviously, inside the absolute value is a negative number. Why? Because the square root of 2 is less than the square root of 3. Therefore, how do you change its absolute value? You put a negative in front of that expression. If you look at the second absolute value, 5 is larger than the square root of 3, therefore inside the absolute value is positive. Therefore, that expression remains unchanged. And the square root of 2 is here. So let's apply distributive law, bring in the negative, so it becomes negative square root of 2 plus square root of 3. 5 minus square root of 3 plus square root of 2. Now, let's put the like terms together. This one and this one cancel each other out. Also, this one and this one cancel each other out. And the only thing that remains here is 5. So the answer to this expression is 5. So in this slide, I'm going to teach you how to change an absolute value function to a piecewise function. Let's write again the definition of absolute value of x that we had it in the first slide. Okay, now I want to change this one, absolute value of x minus 2, to a piecewise function. So I'm going to set this green one as t. Later on, we are not going to do this again because it's not like nothing wise, right, to do. But for now, for better understanding, I advise you to do that. So I set x minus 2 as t. Now what we have is absolute value of t according to the definition that you see on top of the page. It's going to be t for t larger than or equal to 0 and negative t for t less than 0. Now we need to replace t with x minus 2. Therefore, absolute value of x minus 2 is going to be, I'm going to replace this t that I made it blue with x minus 2. The t here is also the same, right? T doesn't change. T is itself everywhere. So it's x minus 2 is larger than or equal to 0. Here we have So we need to solve this red one and write it as simple as possible. I would recommend to do it at the side. See, x minus 2 is larger than or equal to 0, therefore x is larger than or equal to 2. I moved to the other side, and since it was negative, now it's positive. The final step is here. So x minus 2 when x is larger than or equal to 2. And you can bring the negative in, so it becomes negative x plus 2 when x is less than 2. So I got this by solving this one, right? Because if you solve this one, it becomes x less than 2. Let's have one more example. Let's change 7 minus 2x to a piecewise function. Again, you can set this one as t. Therefore, what we'll have is absolute value of t, which becomes t as t is larger than or equal to 0, the original definition of absolute value. Now we are going to replace t with 7 minus 2x. So 7 minus 2x as 7 minus 2x is larger than or equal to 0. Negative 7 minus 2x as 7 minus 2x is less than 0. Now we need to solve this one. I'm going to do it at the side. So 7 minus 2x is larger than or equal to 0. I'll move 2x to the right side. So 7, then divide both sides by 2, so it's going to be x less than or equal to 7 over 2. Of course, you can write it this way. And if you solve the second one, which is this one, I'm going to do it quickly here. So 7 minus 2x is less than 0. 7 is less than 2x, divide by 2. 7 over 2 is less than x. And this is the final step that you are seeing here. 7 minus 2x as x is less than or equal to 7 over 2, and negative 7 plus 2x as x is larger than 7 over 2. This is how we change an absolute value to a piecewise function. I'm going to give you another example because sometimes other than the absolute values, we have x's outside the absolute value. For example, let's see this. X plus absolute value of x minus 2, for example. This is what I suggest. First, you focus on absolute value. And for now, we put this aside and we'll focus on this. So I think now you're good enough not to set x minus 2 as t, right? So it becomes x minus 2 when x is larger than or equal to 2, negative x plus 2, x less than 2. We actually had x minus 2 in the third slide, right? This is why I quickly wrote that. Okay, now all you need to do is adding x to this column, the yellow column. Therefore, the final step would be x plus x minus 2. So you add x to x minus 2 for x larger than or equal to 2, and x plus negative x plus 2, right? I added to the second one. So let's combine the like terms. So x plus x, 2x minus 2 for x larger than or equal to 2. And here, x and negative x cancel each other out. And what remains is 2 for x less than 2. This is the final step. And let's have the last example of today's lesson. Okay, so let's have x times x minus 1. Again, I suggest you to forget about x first. Just focus on absolute value of x minus 1, and at the end you multiply the expression by x. So x minus 1 becomes x minus 1 for x larger than or equal to 1 is pretty much the same as x minus 2, right? And negative x plus 1 when x is less than 1. Now time to multiply by x. Therefore, x absolute value of x minus 1 equals x times x minus 1 for x larger than or equal to 1, x times negative x plus 1 for x less than 1. Even though that's done, but we can like apply distributive law and multiply it in. So it becomes x squared minus x for x larger than or equal to 1, and negative x squared plus x for x less than 1. Yeah, this is how we change the absolute value to a piecewise function. So if you have an expression outside the absolute value, first you need to find the absolute value. First you need to change the absolute value to a piecewise function, and then apply that expression. If it is added, you add it to the final answer. If it's multiplied, you multiply it by that expression. Thank you for watching.